All right, it says you imagine that you're a imagine you are a sea urchin. You're a marine mammal animal that attaches a hard surface for stability. You're covered in spikes and protect you from predators. You eat giant kelp and a type of seaweed, and you prefer temperate water, typically between 55 and 16 degrees Celsius. But you've noticed some days in the ocean around you feels too hot. So they're giving you, this is called foreshadowing, and they're telling you here that generally a sea urchin lives in this kind of temperature. And they're telling you that something's happening and making it hotter than it normally is. Okay, these periods of unusual warming in the ocean are called marine heat waves, so they've told you this, so that you should be connecting the heat waves to the temperature. All right, so the heat wave is hotter than 16 degrees. During the marine heat waves, the water gets 2 to 3 degrees hotter, so they've told you that. So you're looking at a heat wave is going to be 2 to 3 degrees hotter. That might not sound like much, but for a sea urchin, that's a lot. Ocean's temperature is normally very consistent, so urchins are used to a small range of temperatures. Urchins are cold-blooded, which is no longer used, by the way. We don't normally use cold-blooded anymore, but that's fine. You know what that means. That means that that their temperature is going to be dependent on the temperature of their surrounding. We'll talk about what the actual word is for that later. This means they can't control their body temperature and rely on the warm water around them. So whatever temperature the ocean water is, they are too. Aaron is a scientist who studies environmental changes, like temperature affects organisms. Aaron first got excited about sea urchins when she interacted with the research lab. When she started graduate school, she learned more about biology and started to ask questions about sea urchins, how sea urchins would react to marine heat waves. Hot water can speed up animal metabolisms. Now, you may not know what metabolism is, but it speeds them up, so you should have gotten that from that particular part of the sentence. Sea urchins, sorry, I lost my place here. Actually, you might even know metabolism from its common use. Hot water can speed up animals' metabolism, which means they want to digest, eat more, and they use more energy. However, warmer temperatures can cause stress, potentially causing sea urchins to be clumsier and confused. So you all know what stress is. One summer, two science teachers, Emily and Tracy, came to California to work in the same lab as Aaron. Emily and Tracy wanted to do science research so they can share their experience with their students. As a team, they decided to test whether marine heat waves could be stressing sea urchins and looking simpler behavior that could be easily measured. So they looked for something simple they could measure. Healthy sea urchins have writing instinct to orient themselves in a way that's hold on a second, let me straighten that out. Right away using their sticky feet. So by writing, they mean if they get turned upside down, they straighten up. And because they're stressed, they can't. Okay. And I think everybody got that based on the answers that you all put in on the exam. The research team predicted that urchins would be slower to right themselves in warmer temperatures. So here they say predicted is a key word. Predicted that sea urchins would be slower to right themselves in warmer water. So if I were you, I would be writing. Let's finish highlighting and underlining. However, they also thought that the response could depend on the temperature sea urchins were used to living in. So maybe all right. If the urchins had been acclimated to higher temperatures, they might not be as strongly affected by themselves by the heat waves. together, Aaron and Emily took, all right, so right now, I'm looking at this. Before I go any further, I'm going to write down what I know. I know that we're looking at sea urchins. I know we have normal ocean temperatures. Which, according to this reading, is from 5 to 15 degrees. 5 degrees Celsius to 15 degrees Celsius. I'm assuming that depends on the season. And that there's these heat waves that are 2 to 3 degrees higher. I'm just reading and writing down what I know. Another word for that is what I'm given. So this is 2 to 3 degrees higher. So together, Aaron, all right, so then the other thing is that they predicted. Now, when you see the word predicted, what are you thinking? How do we predict in science? In science, we predict with either a hypothesis or a theory. And since we have no real theory, we're going to go ahead and just say a hypothesis. And the hypothesis that I'm reading here says that the research team predicted that sea urchins in warmer temperatures than they're used to. Together, Aaron, Emily, and took 20 sea urchins into their lab, and so this is the hypothesis they're going to test. So you have to come up with a test that answers that question or tests this hypothesis. The question is, does temperature impact sea urchins' time to right themselves? An increase in temperature. Impact the sea urchins' time to right themselves. That's your question. So together, Aaron and Emily took 20 sea urchins in their lab, so they had 20 sea urchins. I'm just going to say CU, sea urchins. And split them into two groups. 10 were kept at 15, so there's 15 degrees is group 1. And then that was that's a normal temperature, right? That's normal. And then 10 were put in 18 degrees in group 2. Normal. We're wondering about the impact of increased temperature on the sea urchin. So this is our test group, right? At least you should be thinking that. That's our test group. Where this over here would be our what? Why would we be looking at what they would normally be doing? Why would we put any sea urchins at what is happening in the ocean all the time? That's our control group. All right. Now, the marine heat wave temperature, okay. And let the sea urchins, they let the sea urchins acclimate to these temperatures for 2 weeks. So they let them sit. So now you took those and they said acclimate. Let me highlight that word. Acclimate. That means they got used to it. You have a test right after this on this. I'm going to ask you, you're going to go on Schoology and you're going to answer 6 questions. Get used to it. Acclimate, used to it. Should be easy, right? It should be no problem. Acclimate, get used to it. So they spent 2 weeks doing this. And they measured the time. Then after they spent the 2 weeks acclimating, getting used to it, they tested how long the sea urchins took to right themselves and flip over. They did this at 3 temperatures for each sea urchin, but it's 15, 18, and 21. So they did 3 temperatures. They did 15 degrees Celsius. That's group 1, the new group, group 1. They did another group at, I believe they said 18. Let me double check. 18 and 21, that's right. (18 degrees). And they have a group 3. Is at 21 degrees Celsius. So now when they tested these groups and they looked at their data, now I'm thinking to myself, well, why did they do that? They did that to see if those that were used to 18 degrees were flipping over at the same time as the control group. 15 degrees is still the control group. (18 degrees is now, you're going to put it, if you take the 18 degrees and you measure these two, theoretically, these times in seconds, how long does it take the sea urchin to flip over, should be the same as this time in seconds here in this group. And then if I put those same sea urchins that were used to, got used to 18 degrees, and I put them in 21 degrees, if my hypothesis is correct, then it should take them longer at group 3. That would be the idea. All right, that's all I have. I haven't even looked at the charts yet, right? I already drew this all out. I thought about it, and I organized all the information that I was given. All right, so this is all the information I was given. So you want to make sure that you know the information you're given. All right, so now let's look at the questions. So here they gave me the data tables, and notice that they give me the normal ocean temperature, just like if you go back, if you rewind the video, if you'd like, and look at it, you'll see the normal temperature was at, I think it was 18 degrees. Then there was I think it was 15 degrees or something like that. 18 was the marine heat wave, and then I think they did 21, which was the extreme. And they looked at the number, sea urchin number from 1 to 20. So each sea urchin was given a number, and they looked to see how much time it took them to flip over. So at normal ocean temperatures, 97, 107, 174. So, and these guys were the ones. These guys were acclimatized to 15, which means they got used to 15 degrees. These 10 were used to 15 degrees, and these 10 were used to 18 degrees, and they saw, so 15 degrees, this group was used to this normal temperature, and then they were put in heat waves. Notice the temperature went up a little more. The time went up a little more, and then here the extreme heat wave, the time took even longer. Where these that were used to 18 in the marine heat wave, they took a shorter amount of time than they did even in the normal temperatures, it looks like. But of course, I don't really have averages. I just have data points, so I have to. But I'm quickly seeing that I see numbers here that are bigger than these numbers, even though this is warmer. Why? Because they got used to the warm temperature, and then I put them in colder water, and that shock made them move slower. Now I put them in hotter temperature, and they even move even slower. So heat does indeed make them move slower. All right, so that's what I see in this data, but I haven't really been asked a question yet. Again, what did I do? What I would do is I would write down what my interpretation, my statement, or my interpretation of this data. Before I even look into it, I would say that the temperature increasing did slow them down. That's one thing, and I can also state that they were able to acclimate to, or get used to, the higher temperature. And I can also state that if I changed it, if the temperature changed, triangle means change. If the temperature changed, they slowed. And I would even say they were slowest in the highest temperatures. And where did I get all this information? Right from this chart that I just looked at and analyzed. I just looked at the data and saw the numbers. This is this normal temperature, the ones that were acclimatized to 15 degrees. Where this was my control group. I compare it to the control group. I see that this group was at each point seemed to be slower, except here this one actually got faster. But notice that on average, if I took an average, I would guess, just guessing, that it should be, theoretically, should be slower. And here in the extreme heat wave, for sure, when I increased it by 2 degrees even more, for sure, they slowed down. But then here, look, this one actually sped up, right? It was faster in all three. So there are some anomalies, some data points that didn't fit my line. Remember what we talked about when we graphed the data. When you graph data, you're not going to see a pattern until you graph it and you put the best fit line in. Then you can see the relationship between temperature and extreme data, but and the temperature and the flipping time. Then I look at 18, and I probably look at the same data and look at the same results as well. All right. So what was the independent variable? I hope that by this point you can say that the independent variable was in fact and by the way, you wouldn't even be able to really determine the answer to the question, okay, until you do an average of all the data and look at standard error and then compare them at that point, because every data point, the average in this case, is taking the place of the best fit line when you graph it. The best fit line and taking the average does something similar. You're getting a bigger picture than any one data point. So an independent variable, when you look at that, the independent variable is, I hope you realize, is the temperature, because you're changing the temperature. I hope you realize that the dependent variable is the time it takes to flip. Identify any changes in trends or differences that you see in your graph. Draw arrows pointing out what you see. Write one sentence describing what you see next to each arrow. All right, so So what I look at 15 degrees, and I look at marine heat wave versus normal ocean for the group that was raised at 15 degrees or was kept at 15 degrees for 2 weeks. What I see is that that these average times actually were slower, right? Slower than the control group. And what was the control group? The control group was the normal ocean temperature. So no matter what they were raised in, warming the water, the marine heat wave data showed, compared to the control group, the animals in hotter temperatures were slower than the control group. So temperature does decrease their response to flipping over. That's what this graph shows you. All right, for some reason I have 2 of these, I don't know why. And then these answers were extra credit, so I'm not going to worry about those. But you should be able to make a statement and a hypothesis, and you should be able to tell independent variable, control group, dependent variable. And if you had a bunch of data that was the same every time, or very similar every time you did it, then you would have to say it's high precision. All right, so that's it. Those were the 6 questions. That was the analysis of the experiment. And these extra credit questions we can discuss for anybody who wants to know if they got the questions right or wrong. In order to really get into these, we'd have to do the averages of the temperatures and really think about each one independently, and I don't want to make this video too long. All right, have a good one.